Welcome to our session. We are thrilled to be here. I want to introduce myself. I'm Valentina Rodriguez. I'm a principal architect at Red Hat, but also I'm a project maintainer at Qflow. And I've been working with these two amazing people for, I don't know, a couple of years on diverse aspects from platforms and applications. So hand it over to them to introduce.
Yep, my name is Simon Forster. I'm officially a technical architect. I do platform engineering, architecture and engineering work, and I work in financial services in the City of London in generally large and complex institutions.
Hi, my name is Colin Lacy. I'm a senior software engineer at Cisco, where I've been for 6 years. And as far as the platform engineering world goes, I will be playing the role of your application developer today. So your customer, your stakeholder.
Great. So with that, I want to talk about this session today, right, with composable platforms. So we hear about composability. We want to bring that concept of composability to understand how it can bring business value, how can be aligned also to your requirements in your organization. So the main idea with composability is it's about the components and how they interact with each other, but also the value added to your business. So it's not only about architectural. It's also about processes, people, and how they can all work together. So this session for today, we will be talking about all those three concepts and how composability sometimes works on the platform, but sometimes it doesn't work in our processes and when the personas needs to access. So, yeah.
So one of the things you just mentioned there was personas, right? And I know you've done a lot of work around personas in platform engineering. So my question to you would be, how do personas fit into the composable platform model?
Great question. So one of the things is you have seen AI, of course, that we have new personas right now interacting with the platform. So we have AI engineers, MLOps, but before, and also a lot of organizations still doing modernizations, migrations, and wondering how that will look like. So when we look in those personas, these, I don't know, Python developers, web developers, the platform engineers, they all will have a different perspective of what composability will mean. And that is very important. So maybe as a platform, I could say, okay, a composable platform is a platform that can add value. If we move into the next slide, we have a definition about composability. So it provides a different user experience and a broad range of components to fulfill technical needs. But it's really about adding that business value. So maybe as a platform engineer, the composability aspect could be how I can bring networking configurations, maybe a new worker node or a master node, or how I can bring observability, how I can bring security in a way that I can customize it and decide where that security aspect will be configurable, maybe in a specific namespace or project or application. But maybe as a developer, for example, for me, the importance could be I just want to build my applications and how I can access the specific components without adding the complexity on my daily basis. I don't want to care about the platform. I just want to build my application securely. But of course, I need to do that following the organization and the organization guardrails with security best practices and so on. So the composability aspect is also about how I can operate with that platform in a way that doesn't disrupt my work and doesn't add more complexity, but also considering all the time constraints. The same is with AI engineers, how I can work with the platform in a way that only access the things that I need. It doesn't add more complexity on it. So with that, I want to ask Colin, how do you juggle all the components, prioritizations between the different stakeholders? Because we want to leverage the part of the platforms that are working, so how you handle all those different personas that now they need to interact, and then they need to request all those different access into the platform.
Yeah, so at least from a developer perspective, one of the key things that I look for, through a lot of different reorgs, I've worked with a lot of different platforms. And one of the key things that I look for is, well, there's really two. The first, be honest and open with your roadmap. All right. I know that especially in the platform as a product world, we have product owners and maybe even our managers are out there stomping pavement and saying, hey, jump on our platform. We've got all the stuff. Hey, do you have this? Yes, we do. Right? Well, if you're honest with your roadmap, then we don't have any surprises when we start adopting your platform, right? Maybe I say, okay, I'm going to adopt your compute, and also I need CI/CD. Can you provide that? You might say yes, but then when I actually start to integrate with it, it's like, okay, this is only half built, right? That's a temptation when you're trying to justify your job by providing value, but at the same time, it's going to create bad feelings for developers, right? So if your CI/CD isn't fully baked, be honest with that. I can accept it. I can probably build, something to Band-Aid over for a little while, right? But then the other part of that is stick to your roadmap. If you say you're going to deliver it in 6 months, and then 6 months later it's still going to be delivered in 6 months, right? My Band-Aid solution is probably going to fall over rather soon, and I'm probably going to start looking somewhere else. The other important thing that I look for is don't overcommit, right? Don't commit to just 100% new features, 100% new user onboarding. As someone who's been burned in the past by platform engineers or platform teams that really want me on the platform and then forget that I'm there, right? Some of the things that I've seen are, hey, we don't have time to fix this bug. You're going to have to fix it. Okay, how do I fix it? We can't really onboard you right now. Another thing I've seen, and this was really dirty, was, okay, we'll get to that bug. 2 weeks later, I notice a new line in the documentation. There's a known bug. We're not going to fix it. It's like, So, right, dedicate time to feature support for existing features. If you focus only on new features, and again, temptation is there, right? You want to bring new teams on to justify your job, but if you only do that, then people are going to start to feel sour when they're not supported. So, yeah.
So I'm on the other side of the equation. I'm there to support Colin and his teams. One of the interesting things I find, I build and develop platforms within fairly complex institutions. So I've got different requirements that I need to be able to host. Some of the application requirements that I need to serve are distributed large-scale applications, HPC-type applications. Others are very low latency applications as well. I'm very wary of the applications that I need to support, and so to Colin's point, I have to work very carefully to go and set realistic expectations about the services that, and the capabilities that I'm surfacing through services. Some of the challenges that I have is that I'm dependent on other groups within a large organization. For example, some cloud platforms, Kubernetes on-premise, for example, I can build that, but there are other services that I can't, so I'm dependent on other people. Likewise, I'm also dependent potentially on other teams for CI/CD services that I'm an interface for. So one of the really important challenges is that I find I have to deal with is understanding when I build a platform, who is accountable and responsible for a given requirement. So let's say, for example, in an institution, I need to make sure that there are approvals to get through to production, okay? And a developer can't do it. It needs to be done by an operations person. Now, I can build an approval process myself, or I can have a team providing underlying Git services, for example, if we're in the world of Argo and pull requests, to go and engineer that for me. One of the challenging things that I have to negotiate is when I'm dependent on other teams, are they actually accountable for that service? Or actually, does the accountability lie with the application team? After all, we're running, for example, I've got a low latency application. I need to, I am accountable for what goes into production. Please don't go and tie my hands, over-engineer a platform and cause problems for me. So just to round out on that, understanding the accountabilities and the responsibilities, we're all familiar with those RACI matrix. Actually, use them. They're a really important tool, and sometimes just injecting those words. And also, as a platform engineer, sometimes I love taking control of stuff, you know? But it's also not necessarily in my interest, and it will cause me tremendous problems further down the line. So it's important for me to set a clear roadmap. I find I have to have very clear communication with my application teams, my delivery teams, and then if I do that and help with that roadmap, then I think there's a great scope for clarity. That was a bit of a rant, wasn't it?
So the other thing I think is important is when we think about the user experience, right, and how that affects when they are working with a specific platform. And one of the things that I think is very important is the aspect of self-service and platform engineering. So how self-service, for example, can bring and add value not only to the end user, but also like kind of take the platform engineering skills and scale it. So imagine that you are, sometimes I speak with a lot of platform engineers that they have, I have to onboard like 100 users. I had to bring 1,000 applications. So I need to do that over and over and over again. So how we can take that knowledge and put it in things like golden paths, like one of the projects I enjoy working is Backstage, for example. So how I can take that concept and try to scale the platform engineering skills to do self-service for end users. So I think with all the complexities of waiting, talking with the different teams, how we can bridge, those gaps between the personas. Sometimes it's really simplifying all those processes and, leveraging the cloud-native ecosystem to provide a better user experience with best practices and so on. With that, I want to ask Colin about composability, but how have you seen, of course you have seen, but probably tell us about examples of when it can go really bad.
Yeah, what I've seen is especially most common is when a platform is advertised as composable, right, but was only built really as a monolith, right? So you built it as a monolith and then advertised, hey, you only have to use one part of these, two parts of this. You don't have to use the full stack. Okay, great. Right. Not too long ago, I actually jumped on an OpenShift cluster because it was, okay, you can provide my compute needs. That's great. I've got container storage. I've got CI/CD taken care of. And then real sudden, I found, okay, this won't work out because there's an undocumented admission policy that says only images built and stored in their Quay repository can be permitted into that OpenShift. So I reached out, help ticket, how do I get my ECR images allowed in here? What do we have to do to change this policy? Turns out it's a ticket per ECR repo, right? So how fast is that going to scale? It's incredibly slowly. So that's when I just ditched their platform altogether, right? So they could say it's composable. Technically, I only needed, right, their compute if I stored everything in their Quay, but then now I'm in their Quay. And then in order to get in their Quay, it would later turn out I have to be in their Jenkins. And no one wants to be in Jenkins, right? So that's when I've seen it go wrong. You build it as a big thing and then say, you advertise, but don't actually test and don't actually confirm that someone really, or behind the scenes, even worse, that someone actually needs the entire platform in order to use it. But one thing I'm curious about, right? Simon, I know you've worked in regulated industries, right? And at least, the narrative I was given is, hey, we have to lock down what images can come in because of security. We got to be sure that these are built and signed in the proper way. Well, one thing I'm curious about is how do composable platforms succeed in regulated industries? And is compliance something that can potentially conflict?
Compliance in finance. I don't think that there is a conflict there. We can compose, we can put together services that we can expose to teams. I'm very familiar with the key topic, by the way. first off, I think the communication is absolutely critical around communicating what is possible. That Colin had to raise 1,000 tickets, I don't think is an appropriate choice, appropriate thing. The other thing that we, sorry, I've just gone entirely blank, which is really not a great thing to do in a panel discussion. We have to live with policy. Yeah, I'm sorry, I've just gone, could you?
Yeah, so compliance versus composability, right?
Yeah.
Can they go hand in hand?
Yes, compliance and composability can go in hand. We've got the tooling to be able to go and support that. We can put in place that. The most important part of this is the business requirements need to be communicated effectively to the platform team that is delivering, right? So one of the really important aspects of my role is that I get the chance to work very closely with delivery and development teams. I get that insight into what they require, and I'm able to help put together services to support that. Where I see trouble arising is when the delivery of the capability is very far removed from the delivery team or the application team within an organization. So I see it less as being does regulation and rules prevent us? No, they don't. But what we do need to understand is what are developers seeking, and then make sure that we deliver to that, and also clearly articulating what we cannot deliver. There are some things I cannot do. I can't mirror all of Docker Hub into a bank. I would love to, not. That's a joke. But there are things I can't do, but as long as I inform Colin, and also put together the services, the composability aspect's really important here. I don't have to boil an ocean. Composability means that I don't have to provide everything. I just provide the right things.
Great, well said. So I guess, what do you wish for in terms of composability? Just the last thing to close out.
Over to you, Colin.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I guess you've probably heard this before, but I believe this might be the year for WASM, right? WebAssembly modules, and whether it is or not, right? One thing I'm hopeful for is that WASM or something like it will become more mainstream, more widely adopted, so that at least following the promise of WebAssembly modules, right? I, as an application developer, only have to ship my business logic, right? I'm shipping as little code as possible. And some of those repeated things, like a SDK for a cloud provider, right? Or a MySQL driver, right? That's all provided by the platform. I don't have to worry about it. There's a very minimal API call I have to make, whatever that interface looks like, right? That allows me to just focus on the important stuff of my code, right? So I don't have to keep on writing whether it's fetch an authentication token over and over again, right? Those are some of the things, some of the more code level things I would love to see from platforms going forward.
I really like WASM. It's a technology I'm really interested in. Another one that I'm looking at talking about it from a technology perspective is the Kubernetes Resource Orchestrator, CRO. I think this is something that I think is quite interesting to see how that's evolving, and I'd like to see, simplifying the ability to provide services there. I think that's one thing for me.
Yeah, so with everything AI, as I mentioned, I'm a project maintainer at Kubeflow, and so I think as AI is evolving every day, and one of the projects like Kubeflow it's really kind of a composable platform that allows you to bring a specific components, whether you want to train or you want to serve the model. You also may want to work with Gen AI. So I think this, such as Kubeflow, this type of platform that you can can use and select and use specific things you want, but also it's flexible enough to connect and integrate with the cloud-native ecosystem. It's one of the things I really like seeing right now, but also want to see growing within the community and maybe more projects integrated with. So I think the importance of composability in the terms of, okay, I want to how this platform or this product or this project will fulfill the needs that I have as an AI engineer or maybe an ML ops. I think it's really critical. So I think we need to continue thinking in ways to provide a better user experience, but also on these new kind of players on the Kubernetes ecosystem, how all as a community we can bring value to all those new users that sometimes, such as data scientists, they are, do they need to learn about Kubernetes? How we can simplify them as platform engineers, their path so they can continue producing, but in a way that is scalable by taking advantage of Kubernetes. So with that, we have one last slide that is about the different resources. Simon, do you want to talk about? So there is a blog about the personas, the personas that, I wrote about it, but also there are other white papers. I don't know if, Simon, you want to talk about the maturity model briefly?
Oh, just very briefly, I think you'll see on there we've got the platform maturity model. I know that that's a real staple of the platform engineering community and a brilliant resource, and also the platforms engineering white paper. Another resource you may be perhaps a little less familiar with is the cloud native maturity model, which was initially drafted a number of years ago. We've got a session on Thursday about that, actually, by the way, and that's slightly more higher level than the platform's maturity model, and it's also being updated. So that's just one thing to be aware of. And then also, as Valentina mentioned, we did publish an article around the personas involved as well within platform as a product and platform engineering as well. So please do feel free to check out those resources.
And for that, thank you so much. I don't know if there is time for questions. Yeah.
Hi, I have a question regarding onboarding new customers to your platform, and sort of you kind of determine that your ramp might be, or the cliff might be too high, right? So what are possible strategical help? And I guess this is, you talked about, adding new customers, like from your experience that you've seen working as strategies when you're onboarding, like how do you make it composable? What are the things you do first when you're onboarding new use cases or new personas?
So, I mean, keeping in mind, I'm from the consumer side, right? So what I've seen work for me is when they actually ask what we need, as opposed to telling us, here's what you need, right? Because in theory, we can all see the blueprint of, build, store the artifact, deploy the artifact, observe the artifact, right? But there's a lot more nuance. Otherwise, this would have been easy and we wouldn't have to be here, right? So that it's that nuance where it actually comes into play. And then even in just like running the artifacts, right? One of the things that irks me a little bit is, hey, I need MySQL. No, you don't. Here's Postgres. Right? It's like they are not the same. Like very specifically not the same, right? So when it comes to onboarding new users, ask. Like that to me is the most important thing. Like be responsive to what their needs might be, and then again going back to the timeline, like it can't solve everyone's problem immediately, and that's. I think developers, when we used to be agile and it was we don't set deadlines, that was Candyland for us, right? We used to love that, and so we understand that you can't say like, oh, we've got that now, just give us till tomorrow. It's not going to work, right? If there's lead time, it's understood.
Perfect.
Anyone else want to chime in on that?
Other questions? Okay. Anyone?
Yeah, I think also on the onboarding side, like thinking on self-service and how you can simplify that experience through portal or, I don't know, a process, whatever you want to call it within your organization that can be more automated and easy for end users. Because sometimes it's like, okay, where is the documentation? Where is this app? Where is this? And, and usually organizations, like, I don't know, the documentation is not up to date. So how we can bring all those things together on maybe in a centralized place or in a way that is really simplified for the end user and easy to access.
One thing I would add as well is that sometimes it can be really tempting for platform teams to think, I'll just go and do that very straightforward pipeline that Colin mentioned. Talk to your developers, and what you might find is that they don't necessarily want, for example, to have a backstage portal in order to be able to get hold of resources. They sometimes, an API works much better for them. So have the conversation and find out what developers really are. Your product manager, product owner, whatever you want to call it, should be able to facilitate that conversation. And that's a real strength as well. And that helps onboarding, because if I give you with something with the right interface, the one that you want, you'll probably use it.
Actually, so that reminded me of something. One of the most successful platforms I've ever worked with. It didn't have a UI, it didn't have Backstage, didn't have anything. They built everything in HCL, in Terraform modules, right? You wanted to deploy something, here are the extremely well-documented Terraform modules. You pull them, right? You define the input values, and you commit to their GitHub repository. They build it, right? They validate, and then that's it. Right, so everything was through Terraform, and it really worked, right? Considering they didn't have to build a UI, right? They were able to deliver pretty fast.
Any other questions?
So we all love the experienced customers, right, coming to our platform. How would we balance it if our customer is not very experienced, right? What we as a platform should provide to those customers to make it as easy as possible for them. Like, for example, customer doesn't have knowledge of Kubernetes, but they were told, go and run it on Kubernetes from your experience.
Can you repeat the question? Yeah. So it's about how we can simplify the experience for maybe
right, because we talked about, before questions were more like towards the experienced customers, right? What do we do for customers who don't have much experience?
Yeah, I think it's about, it's thinking about what are the skills that they may need, and don't force it. Like sometimes it's like they should, so have that personas aligned, who should be doing what. That's, I think, is very important, because sometimes we do burden like developers with platform problems, or I don't know. Is that on them, or is that on the platform engineering team? So I think like define those boundaries, it really helps understanding those specific roles. And then from there saying, okay, how much we can abstract the complexity so the daily job doesn't change much, and they can really focus on build applications or bring new models, or I don't know, bring an agent. So really try to abstract that, looking into the cloud native ecosystem and see probably someone, because we are such a huge, amazing community, someone has gone through the same thing probably. So how someone has resolved it in some way. So if it is something that, you know, is trusted by community and maybe already has adoption, it could be like, I don't know, like, yeah, I mentioned Backstage, Kubeflow, I don't know. Depends on like WASM, like they were talking, like it could be different projects that you can leverage to simplify the experience. But really, I think when we look into the technology, it's also like understanding the personas, defining these boundaries, and defining processes as well, like, you know, self-service, as I mentioned, and things that can really simplify, reduce not only the time per each persona, but the time to wait. Like, oh my God, now I am waiting. Or if something goes wrong, and how I can manage if someone, I don't know, has a problem, has an access issue or something around that. I think those three things are important.
Yep. For me, talk to your users and understand if they're not experts on Kubernetes and don't want to know about platform internals, they don't need to. You know, I mentioned not having a UI. Maybe a UI with a very straightforward workflow can work well. And also we've got projects such as build packs now, for example, that can help developers with creating container images. We've got a great set of technology as the ecosystem's matured to help that. So I would, again, talk to your users and think through, like, what do you want to do? Do you just want to go somewhere, click, and, feed it an artifact, have it integrate, containerized and deployed? Or do you want to do it yourself? Yeah.
Great question, thank you.
I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah, so this may deviate a little bit from composability per se, but I was wondering from maybe the consumer side or an organizational perspective, have you had to deal with platform sprawl? Just to ship a specific feature, you have to deal with a bunch of internal developer platforms that don't really work well together, and if there are strategies that work either from, it doesn't seem like it can be a specific platform that has that can solve this problem more like from an organizational perspective, or anything that you can do proactively from a consumer side to ever deal with that.
Sorry, so if I just repeat, just to understand, it's around platform sprawl from an organization perspective.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I would find out why we're suffering from this issue in the first place. Is it because we are forced to? Because, for example, I have to put stuff in the US, I have to put stuff in Europe, and I need to put stuff in Asia for specific reasons. That might be it. That's an easy one. That's a sovereignty issue. But the other reason is maybe we're ending up with people going and deploying additional platforms or creating platforms because the ones that we have are too rigid, don't support the functionality that we need, won't scale. So if I'm suffering from sprawl, I want to know what exactly is the problem that those additional platforms are there to solve, and then work backwards. Is that the right, is this really the right solution? Because often it's around non-functional requirements that are not being lived up to, was always the biggest problem, and I find non-functionals are tougher than functional. It's my little horse, and work that way. So dig into the reasons. It's probably frustration related, at worst as well, and not technical.
Yeah, from a developer perspective, there is definitely a give and take, right? I want my Mongo versus, I want my Redis. You can't give me Memcached, right? And it's okay to push back a little bit, right? If I've got a really good reason, right? Redis streams, I need that specific feature in Redis, okay, then you understand. But if it's, well, I really like Redis, and that's my code and how it's written, then you can push back and say, look, how much time is it going to take you to refactor this, as opposed to us deploying Redis and now maintaining it, right? And other teams might start using it, and now we got more to support there. So I think it's okay to push back, right, and challenge demands as they pop up. And then, I think it's a conversation between you, your consumers, and the managers of what are we willing to invest in maintaining versus what are we willing to invest in changing, right? What's going to provide the most business value?
Okay, I think that's time for now. So I'd like to say thank you very much to all of our panelists.